Sharper Point Commentary, presented by Schwartz Laser Eye Center.
As I watch in the monitors here on the studio, as Jimmy Carter's body is being moved into the National Cathedral, Michael Gibbons was one of the thousands of people who traveled from far away to pay respects to Carter as his body was lying in state inside the U.S. Capitol Rotunda.
President Carter was the first person I ever voted for. First time I was able to vote. Just so impressed with him, the way he carried himself and how he served our country. As
we say our last goodbyes to Jimmy Carter, it's important to remember that while he was president of the United States, his time in office amounted to a little less than 4% of his lifetime. The guy did live to more than 100, after all. We in the media have talked a lot about what Jimmy Carter did after his time in office. I believe we're doing that for a couple of reasons. Number one, most American adults are now of an age where they didn't have a chance to vote for or against Carter and really don't remember his time in office. And number two, there really wasn't a lot of great things to remember about his time in office because he really wasn't one of our greatest presidents. He did do a lot for Middle East peace, bringing Israel and Egypt together to sign a treaty, and Carter left a legacy of arms control that the man who defeated him in the 1980 election, Ronald Reagan, was able to build upon. But there was also the Iran hostage crisis, a bad economy, and often it seemed to Americans that Carter was more concerned with meaningless issues like making sure the White House tennis courts were being used fairly. I think it's because Jimmy Carter was a guy focused on individuals. His Christian faith guided much of his life, and he exuded the love and humility that Christians are supposed to. After all, he was the first president to wear blue jeans in the Oval Office. But a bigger case in point is the fact that post-presidency, Jimmy Carter made Habitat for Humanity an organization that everybody knew, not because he put on makeup and spent a couple of hours recording public service announcements for them. He put on coveralls and a hard hat and swung a hammer alongside his beloved wife, Rosalind. Aaron Rank, president and CEO of Habitat for Humanity in L.A., tells KTAR's Colton Krolak that when she met him for the first time, he didn't big-time her.
The first time you meet, a former president of the United States, it's sort of intimidating. You're not quite sure what the protocol is or how to act. And he immediately makes you feel comfortable and relaxed. And he speaks to you as though you've been his neighbor or his family member for years.
I experienced that version of Jimmy Carter when I had the opportunity to interview him on KTAR a number of years ago. He just published a book on his faith and was talking to plenty of people around the country, but during our time together, he made me feel like I was the only person who was interviewing him for his book. But while Carter also had quite a life after his time in office, he also had a lot of life before. He grew up in a very segregated Georgia, but his mother invited many of their black neighbors to the house. Even though his dad would exit out the back door as they'd make their way in through the front door, Jimmy took after his mom. And James Earl Carter Jr. graduated from the United States Naval Academy in 1946. And when receiving his first duty station, he didn't get his choice of assignments and was actually assigned to the USS Wyoming, one of the oldest Navy ships in operation at the time. But he proved to be such an amazingly bright engineering officer, he was given his choice of where he wanted to go. And he chose nuclear subs. That led to him helping to save Ottawa, Canada, when their chalk water nuclear reactor went haywire, and actually was one of the humans that was lowered into that reactor for 90 seconds at a time to repair the site. Jimmy Carter had a long, long life, 100 years, and there was a lot after it, and there was plenty before it. And yes, while he was maybe not the greatest president, he was certainly one of the greatest men to be president, based on his time before and after.
Thanks for watching Sharper Point. Click to see more from Arizona's Morning News and tap the button in the middle to subscribe.